West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We want to read now from Molly's latest piece for Vanity Fair entitled, Let's Not Sleepwalk into Another Trump Presidency. And Molly, you write in part this: the media isn't taking the former guy returning to power seriously enough. With the 2024 cycle in full swing, he's being largely covered like a normal candidate, rather than someone who tried to end democracy. One has to wonder why there isn't more coverage about Trump musing about sentencing the nation's highest-ranking general to death than, say, the age of the current president. Trump routinely attacked journalists during his 4 years in office, now eyeing a return to the White House. Trump is only ramping up the anti-press rhetoric by accusing a media company of country-threatening treason. As anyone who lived through the past 8 years can attest, you underestimate Trump at your own peril. Trump is not getting better. If anything, he's getting worse. I understand the mainstream media may be bored with the crazy, but our country is once again sleepwalking into disaster. And if journalists aren't clear about the stakes of a second Trump presidency, it will be, at least partially, our fault.
Well, and Molly, of course, we're quite aware here at this desk about Donald Trump threatening journalists. Mika talked about the face-shaming episode. He accused me of murder 12 times and suggested that I be tried for murder. Continued doing that because he was angry.
And that's had consequences in our life.
It's had significant consequences in our life. Matt Gaetz took conspiracy theories into Donald Trump in the White House, and Donald Trump gobbled them up, spit them out, and consequences be damned. But again, you know, it does democracy a grave disservice when he's going after reporters, like you said. Also, he's now saying that he's going to ban entire networks that he doesn't like, and a couple of weeks ago was talking about arresting Democrats, just randomly arresting Democrats after he got elected president of the United States. I always say this is like Orban, but no, Orban wasn't even this outspoken when he was running for office. I don't think Erdogan in Turkey is this outspoken when he's running for office. This is a guy who is mimicking Vladimir Putin, just saying the quiet part out loud.
Yeah, it's really scary. His plans for a second term are autocracy at best. I mean, he is really, really scary at this point. And I think that a lot of the mainstream media, the straight reporters, are worried about looking biased. And so they don't want to cover Trump, because if you cover him in this way that's accurate, you seem like a partisan because what he says is so insane. And I think that they are really worried. And look, conservatives have worked the refs, right? They have made it so that anytime there's a sort of unflattering Trump headline or unflattering, they say, well, this is obviously partisanship and obviously the liberal New York Times, the liberal Washington Post. And so you really do see this sort of overcorrection. And I think that Trump is banking on that. And I do also think it's hard to cover this level of crazy. The mechanisms in traditional journalism are not made for someone who has absolutely no regard for truth.
And Molly, over a decade, he has numbed many people, his supporters, but also members of the media. So when he puts up a post that says, Mark Milley, decorated Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman, in better days, as Trump put it, would be hanged for treason, people go, oh, there he goes again. It's not no. So I think it's, as to your point, it's on us, it's on the media, it's on everybody to not be numb to it. Yeah. Just every time he does something like that, just say, no, this is not normal. We can't have our politics, our country be like this. And it gets lost in the shuffle. I mean, a week before, Trump went after liberal Jews on Rosh Hashanah. And that was like a crazy thing. If you're with us, you have to be with us. If you care about Israel, one of the most anti-Semitic tropes that you can get involved in. And it just was lost in the shuffle. And I do think people are really scared of swinging at every pitch. But if you don't draw attention to this craziness, Trump will get reelected, and it will be in some way our fault.
I have thought about this a lot. Meaning, I think that it was sort of true even prior to Trump that the media could overcorrect in terms of covering Democrats versus Republicans as to not appear biased. But do you think that I feel like there's also an element that people don't want to feel duped again, like that they're shocked by what Trump does. There seems to be a reluctance to be shocked because then you seem naive, unsophisticated. I'm not like, what do you think that is? I mean, I think, look, Trump got $2 billion of free media. Those were the estimates after 2016. So you don't want to cover him in this incredulous way where you're like, Trump says something racist. Oh, and you repeat the lie. Like, you do want to focus on the kind of truth sandwich element. You don't want to quote him incredulously. But I also think, this is like a 911 for democracy, right? Like, totally. There's nothing more important than keeping our democracy. And we saw with Trump's first season as president that, that presidency barely ended by his own will.
John, Republicans, particularly in the House, who've looked the other way on all that Donald Trump has done from January 6th, the continued lies about the election, all these indictments, have set up Hunter Biden as some sort of an equivalent to that. Press, why aren't you covering the Hunter Biden story the way that you covered January 6th, as if there's an equivalency there? That's how they're pitching it.
Yeah, it's whataboutism in the highest form. And to Molly's point, they have worked the refs. They claim bias. They claim prejudice from the media. If any time they've adopted Trump's philosophy that fake news does not apply to a story that's not true. It just applies to a story that's negative that he doesn't like. And that is now the sort of ethos of the Republican Party. And look, this is a challenge for the media. I think largely fell down on the job in 2016 in many ways. Improved for 2020, no doubt. Realized you couldn't just take Trump live. You couldn't just put it in a tweet or a cable chyron. You had to provide fact checking. You had to provide context. You sometimes had to say, no, he's lying right now. And I think that we have done that. But we have a long way to go. It's not perfect. We've never had a candidate like this before, an insurrectionist candidate, someone who threatened to overthrow our democracy, and he can't be treated just like anybody else.
I agree.
Yeah, it took me a while. We hung up on him and started, again, and I've got to say, I don't know how anybody, and I've been called and people have asked me my opinion because we've known Trump for a long time. How do you interview Trump? You start by asking the question that a lot of people ask. And you have to ask this question. Is Joe Biden president of the United States? Do you still not believe that Joe Biden? And then you just hammer him. And you can't let it go on to economic development while this guy is still talking about stealing democracy and overturning a presidential election.
An acceptance of a lie. And you can't do that. That's a disservice to viewers or readers.
Yeah, we saw what happened when Mehdi had Vivek on. And he just kept going back to the same question over and over and over again because Vivek was just shooting all over the place, trying to distract, trying to move on to something else. We'll throw an insult out here. It's pure. It's straight out of the Donald Trump playbook. And you just can't do it. You have to stay focused on the issue at hand. And as we move forward, it is true that Trumpers have played the refs. And they're constantly playing the refs. And so, Molly, we got to go, but I just want to go back to you on this one because it's just the insanity of the playing of the refs on like the Hunter Biden laptop. I had somebody very well respected in the media who, likes to think of himself as a truth teller. Right? Oh, I'm going to tell the truth against what the mainstream media says. I'm progressive, but I'm a truth teller, right? And so after Donald Trump was contesting the election, he goes, yeah, that's bad. But what about Hunter Biden's laptop? I'm like, what? I'm sorry. We're in the middle of an American presidential election being stolen. Yeah, there have been articles written about Hunter Biden's laptop, and I sent him like 4 or 5, articles about Hunter Biden, and sending articles that have been written in the past about Hunter Biden and some of the questionable business dealings he did going back to 2019, 2020, before the Biden campaign. And then after January 6th, the same emails. Yeah, you're talking about this so much. What about Hunter Biden's laptop? Well, I mean, you saw what YouTube did or so. And I'm like, okay, is there really no, we talk about it. We've said the same thing over and over again. If Hunter did something wrong, like indict him, try him, convict him, send him to jail. Yeah. I'll write him a note and say, I'm sorry he's in jail. Just like I'll probably do with Donald Trump. But they keep doing it. After the nuclear secrets were stolen, after the war plans were stolen, it's always Hunter Biden. And I'm like, are you serious, truth teller? Like, truth telling without any perspective whatsoever. It reminds me of what George Orwell would write back during World War II, talking about how horrible democracy was, and all you had to do was talk to a fascist or a communist, and they would tell you how horrible democracy was. And Orwell would say, some of their arguments are really true. And maybe we could take more faith in them if you put it in proper perspective, and you didn't realize that all these communists and fascists from across the world, once the first shots were fired in World War II, all fled to America, and all fled to England, and all fled to these democracies that they said were corrupt. Well, that's what I'm saying. There's no perspective here, but they play the refs ceaselessly, and a lot of people in mainstream media are stupid enough to fall for Bobby Knight working the refs and throwing chairs across the gym floor.
And they're also scared. I mean, the media is a business like anything else, and people feel pressure to sort of look like they're cutting it down the middle. I also agree. And look, Hunter Biden has been indicted. It's not like the guy is getting a free walk. He's being indicted on a very unusual federal gun charge. I mean, there is a lot of, there's a lot of justice. These Republicans who say that the Merrick Garland Justice Department is not, being even-handed. I mean, they are indicting Democrats left and right. So I don't think that is really a story the same way they think it is. But again, like the road to another Trump presidency is lined with false equivalencies.
And that's false equivalency. And even as the Wall Street Journal editorial page, there's smoke. There's no fire. They still haven't found fire. Comer hasn't found fire. None of them found fire. They go out saying stupid comments. Maybe there will be a connection at some point. If there's a connection at some point, fantastic. Show it to us. We'll report it on it. Yeah, but again, report Hunter Biden's laptop to the stealing of nuclear secrets, the stealing of a presidential campaign, the fraud on the massive level that we're learning about today in New York State, a judge in New York State calling Donald Trump a rapist. Go on and on and on. Yeah. And again, it's a false equivalency. And I would say the fact that we've talked about it now for 5-6 minutes, I suppose, means that working the refs works.
It is Wednesday, the 27th of September of 2023. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. Precious, the little Yorkie, is our door girl, and she will be seating you directly for our especially special daily special, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? Will no one? Yeah. Well, having a tete-a-tete still on the town Facebook page. I know. Why do I bother? Because I don't know. I just do. I just don't like the idea that this propaganda can be spewed out into the world unfettered without any pushback. It's not to say I'm the only one pushing back, but still, it's a lot of it. You would call it a gish gallop. QAnon mega propaganda bullshit, I think, to put it mildly. So we'll see if I'm been suspended from the group or all of Facebook completely. That's happened before from the not this particular group, but it has happened in the past. Now, I don't know if it's the basketball rules of, retribution. The basketball rules of, life is that whoever reacts to the initial foul gets called for the foul. So, I was accused of character assassination and essentially using rhetoric like Nazi. I don't think I said Nazi. Not once did I ever say Nazi. But they think I did, because that's what I meant. So they got the message. But I was accused of, any number of things that I was really just reacting to. And maybe I will be kicked out because, that's how Facebook did it before they were Meta. Can't be any better. That's the way I look at it. Which is quite rich because one of the parties I know for a fact is in the QAnon realm. Because on their Facebook page with their header and everything, they say they are the storm, or, the whole QAnon thing about the storm is coming. And, of course, I said something silly like, well, what am I supposed to do? Be afraid of the dark? Yeah, well, they don't like that. So, of course, it's one of those adolescent, well, you're a coward if you can't say that to my face. You're hiding behind the keyboard. You're a keyboard warrior. Well, I'm a social justice warrior, too, with a keyboard. So, I don't know. What do I do? If I respond to every veiled threat of physical violence on my being, I don't have time to meet all of them. How many duels can you take on in a day, a week, a month? And what century is this? And how old are we? Please. I know now that if anything gets down to the bone, one of us is going to be charged with a crime on the elderly. One of us will. Maybe both. Can that happen now? Well, I guess so. But it always cracks me up. The response to their idea of incivility by calling their anti-public school rant a LaRouche Bircher strategy that we all have known and come to pretty much hate, except not all of us, but a lot. A lot of us hate it. Apparently not all, because here they are again pushing the same BS. And what are they using? Oh, this bathroom might cause the sexual assault because the trans kids and the LGBTQ kids are going to be in there with my kids. You're you're forcing your agenda on it. It's supposed to be only for academics. And these are the same people that can't stand STEM being taught in the schools. They want to get rid of books from the libraries and the schools. Maybe even bookstores. Bookstores are illegal as a hotbed of woke liberalism. You're damn right it is. Okay. Typical, though. Very typical. And I don't know. Why do I have to prove to these idiots what my intentions are? It's not as if, I know, maybe I'm inflating my own, sense of worth. But it wouldn't take very much digging to find out that, I've been kind of like in the public eye, either on radio and TV in the Bay Area, or any number of organizations that I was a part of or helped start. And anytime you start mentioning just a little bit about, look, I know where I come from, you're showing off. Well, yeah, I suppose, to somebody who doesn't know anything about it, it does seem like showing off, doesn't it? Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Okay. Well, my experience with these people is that they kill your dog, and that's actually happened in my past because of BS. Crosses burned on our lawn, our cat set on fire. Later on, bomb threats called into my dad's office at the university, Cal State Fullerton. The hotbed of liberalism. My God. My car tire slashed, my car set on fire. Yeah, firebombed my car. Yeah, I just had a couple of bumper stickers. One said, impeachment with honor, directed towards Richard Nixon. I'm just saying, my experience is that they resort to violence at the drop of a hat, and they act on it. And I'm supposed to go downtown and meet this guy so he can test whether I'm a coward or not? Give me a break. Leave my dogs alone. I don't want to go John Wick on you. Not a Mel Gibson John Wick either. God, how'd that guy get that franchise? Well, that's a whole other story. And we've got a whole lot of other stories here in store for you. We have curated a show in this salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And yeah, Molly Jong fast at the top with her new book, Let's Not Sleepwalk into Another Trump Presidency. And that should be an order, okay? Not a request. On the rest of the menu, it's a feature, not a bug, that threats and harassment are causing America's West to bleed qualified election officials. Yeah, something like 1,800 years of experience accumulated among all of the election officials in the West being pretty much run out of town by, the same people who will resort to violence at the drop of a hat. Just saying, they do. Good thing California will raise taxes on guns and ammo to pay for school safety. It'd be nice to pay for a lot more than just school safety, but that is a start, especially since this is another one of these anti-public school rants I got to put up with these QAnon LaRouche Birchers. They also whined about school safety. There was a rumor that a kid somebody was going to come with a gun to the school. Oh my God, this is like an open carry place. What do you expect when everybody says, everyone's going to have a gun? Well, it turned out not to be anything. But these anti-government school LaRouche Birchers started whining about school safety. What are we going to do? And of course, what do they want to do? Fortify the school. Send in a SWAT team and, get rid of the counselors, put in a SWAT team. God, I hate them. Well, at least California is on the right track. And finishing up here, academics, universities, and government agencies are ending research programs to counter the spread of online misinformation after a relentless campaign of intimidation. by the MAGA insurgents in Congress. It's top to bottom with this party. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where the German government banned a far-right racist group known for its Nazi indoctrination of children. Yeah, so when I hear about anti-public school BS and how we're indoctrinating our kids with the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights, they pretty much want to do what this group is doing. Yep. And the European Union reports Musk's shitter, formerly known as Twitter, is the biggest purveyor of disinformation in the 27-nation bloc. Well, that's a feature, not a bug either. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, who does a lot more than just monitor that chat room. But thank you for everything that you do, Kelly. Now, if you folks out there in radio listening land would take a gander across the page to the left, yeah, we talk like that around here. I hope people aren't triggered. Anyway, if you could take a gander off to the left and then down a skosh, you'll notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio and maybe send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, it really does help us pay the bills, well, put a big dent in it, and all the other costs that are incurred running this powerhouse of resistance, as we have been resisting for, well, over 13 years now. Wow. Yep. We're in for the long haul because there's a lot of resisting that needs to be resisted. So there. And we thank you for your generosity and from truly the bottom of our hearts, because it allows us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many, many years ago. Over 13 now. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, some people call it shitter. You know, they add the X to it and then say shit. I like that. Shitter. If you want to follow us there on Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of those and a lot more than just take care of the social media feeds. But thank you, Tom. You can follow me on Shitter. I like to call it Twitter still because I'm a rebel. And also on Mastodon, Spoutable, Blue Sky, Tumblr, Instagram, Facebook. You can follow me at Justice Putnam or simply Justice Putnam, depending. And you know what the depending is. And the reason you should follow those social media feeds is that I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime. And that way you can actually get to the original articles. And the links are all there. If you follow my social media feeds, it's just quick and easy. Okay? Okay. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart. Oh, did I say Stitcher again? Let me start over. Spreaker, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, wherever podcasts can be found, just not on Stitcher because SiriusXM took it away, destroyed it. Now, we're still looking into, per request, getting the block of David Waldman's show and our show too onto SiriusXM. Oh, we're still looking into that, and Tom and other staff members are doing the front leg work to see what that entails. So thank you for the request. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of Raw Story by Alexandria Jacobson. And she's an investigative reporter, independent apparently. Since the turmoil of the 2020 election, where numerous county election departments faced recalls, vote challenges, and even threats of violence, more than half of Americans in the western U.S. are served by new election officials because so many experienced ones have left. And those election officials who left, often because of harassment, took with them more than 1,800 years of combined experience, leaving new civil servants with a steep learning curve to support complicated voting processes, often with little federal support, according to a new report from a bipartisan political reform group, Issue 1. The exodus of election officials is not happening in a vacuum and is not happening out of the blue, said Michael Beckel, research director for Issue 1. There has been a concerted and coordinated campaign of harassment against many election officials. Well, we know that. We've seen it in real time. Issue 1 issued or researched 11 western states: Arizona, California, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, my state of Oregon, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming, and found that more than 160 chief election officials left their positions after November 2020 because they were harassed by the usual lists of suspects. The Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers. Now we got libs of TikTok and Moms for Liberty, too. You know, the Goose-Stepping Caucus. Overall, about 40% of election officials in the West are new since the last presidential election. Because when you're flooding the zone with bullshit and you are in a war against reality and truth, what better way to say, well, those election officials are incompetent, so the election must be fraudulent, and it must be fraudulent in our favor, so give it to us. In Arizona, a swing state where some of the most pitched election-related drama occurred following the 2020 election, the shift is even more extreme. 80% of counties have installed a new chief local election official during just the past 3 years. Beam of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. And just don't think it's anything untoward. It is really just a lovely, fluffy egg dish with an equally velvety and lovely hollandaise sauce. So don't be afraid. Okay. Looks like we've been doing quite a bit about Governor Gavin Newsom lately, and we continue with that trend. California will ban people from carrying firearms in most public places while doubling the taxes on guns and ammo that are sold in the state under two new laws Newsom signed yesterday, Tuesday, that will test the limits of the U.S. Supreme Court's new standard for interpreting the Second Amendment. You know, the fraud, the greatest fraud perpetrated on the American public, as Berger said. And he was no liberal commie either. Tell him, yes. Well, the federal government already taxes the sales of guns and ammo at either 10 or 11%, depending on the type of gun. The new law that Newsom signed adds another 11% tax on top of that, making California the only state with a separate tax on guns and also on ammo. And that was according to the gun control advocacy group Brady. You know, the guy that got shot in the head with Ronnie Reagan by, the guy who wanted, to get a little bit of attention, from actresses, child actresses, weirdos. Well, the money will pay for security improvements at public schools and a variety of gun violence prevention programs. Oh, that means we're going to take the guns away, huh? And that's including those geared toward young people in gangs. We don't want to prevent violence from people in gangs. That's woke. The money from the federal tax, which has been in place for more than 100 years, pays for wildlife conservation and hunter education programs. The laws were some of nearly 24 gun control measures Newsom signed on yesterday, but he acknowledged many of these laws may not survive legal challenges now that the U.S. Supreme Court has imposed a new standard on interpreting the nation's gun laws. Just last week, a federal judge struck down a California law banning guns with detachable magazines that carry more than 10 rounds, one of 3 major pending cases challenging California's gun restrictions. Kat Zakrzewski and Joseph Menn of the Washington Post brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Academics, universities, and government agencies are overhauling or ending research programs designed to counter the spread of online misinformation amid a legal campaign from conservative politicians and activists who accuse them of colluding with tech companies to censor right-wing views. Yeah, they're upset because we don't want Vlad Nazi propaganda, Vlad propagandizing us in the Nazi way. The escalating campaign led by insurgent Jim Jordan, I have to do a little bit of editing here for the 3 reporters for the Washington Post. And I'll tell you why, because the Netroo's radio style manual really demands it, especially in this case. Once again, the escalating campaign led by insurgent Jim Jordan, a repug of Ohio, and we all know that part, and other Republicans in Congress and state government has cast a pall over programs that study not just political falsehoods, but also the quality of medical information online. Facing litigation, Stanford University officials are discussing how they can continue tracking election-related misinformation through the Election Integrity Partnership, or otherwise known as the EIP, a prominent consortium that flagged social media conspiracies about voting in 2020 and 2022. The coalition of disinformation researchers may shrink and also may stop communicating with Twitter and Facebook about their findings. The National Institutes of Health froze a $150 million program intended to advance the communication of medical information, citing regulatory and legal threats. Now, that's not coming from Democrats. That's coming from the insurgent members of Congress who are continuing their violent revolution in the overthrow of the United States of America. And we're going to turn a blind eye to it? Well, with that said, why don't we go to our break? And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Murder in the Third Degree. If Kenneth Branagh's and Michael Green's Murder on the Orient Express was about grief, and their Death on the Nile was about love, then A Haunting in Venice is about being haunted by the horrors you have seen, with worry for your loved ones who suffer, by regret for the love you never got, but most of all, haunted by death, by the people you've lost. Based on Agatha Christie's A Halloween Party, A Haunting in Venice takes place in 1947, a scant couple of years after the war, and it continues our arc with the weary Hercule Poirot, who has now sequestered himself in Venice, only to have his isolation breached by a writer acquaintance, played by Tina Fey, who begs Poirot to help her debunk a medium, Michelle Yeoh, what more do you want, at her seance in an infamously haunted villa. And on Poirot number 3, it feels like director Branagh, writer Green, cinematographer Haris Ambaloukas, and casting director Lucy Bevan have really hit their stride. This movie is so tight, starting with the opening frames introducing us to important visual and narrative motifs: birds, clocks, statues, eerie lifeless watchers from the past, and water. Yes, the cast is a collection of stars, but they feel more chosen for what they can do with the roles than for their bankability, giving Branagh's crew their strongest ensemble yet. Lucy Donaldson's editing is often abrupt, like jump scares, and Branagh and Zambaloukas are all over the place with their camera, spinning and panning and dollying, or surprisingly close at unsettling angles. Some compositions are set, some evolve, and some of the most beautiful shots of all the Branagh Poirot films so far. A Haunting in Venice is not horror, it's still a mystery, but it feels like these people joyously embraced being dark, creepy, and ghosty. You know, it took so long to get Branagh Poirot number 2 after number 1. Number 3, only a year later, feels like a surprise early Halloween gift. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a single father of 2 who works 3
part-time jobs and still can't put enough food on the table?
Or maybe a mother who cleans offices at night,
hoping to find meeting leftovers to take home to her hungry family.
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing
a job and getting back on his feet.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Arthritis is common among veterans. Traumatic and overuse injuries during active duty are risk factors for developing arthritis. Fortunately, there are low-cost or no-cost strategies that can help veterans manage arthritis. Physical activity can reduce pain and improve function. It can also help improve mood and play a role in managing other chronic conditions, such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. You can do low-impact activities, such as walking, biking, swimming, and water aerobics, all good forms of exercise. Arthritis-specific classes can help you get started. Information on classes, exercise programs, and tools are available at cdc.gov/arthritis. These resources can help reduce pain and improve function. Learning self-management techniques can help all veterans become more active, improve their overall quality of life, and thrive.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
A demographic time bomb is about to go off in our state prisons. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Decades in prison accelerate aging, both physically and cognitively. In prison, 55 is old. And by 2030, 1/3 of the country's state prison population will be 55 or older, because the number of people serving life without parole has increased dramatically. And the 55 and older population has huge medical needs that are very expensive. Pennsylvania, for example, spends over $122 million per year for medical treatment for people over 50 serving life without parole sentences. All to keep locked up people who, for example, at age 60, are not the same person who was locked up when they were 20. They aged out of crime long ago. And, in addition, many are terminally ill and incapacitated, suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, and with their advancing decrepitude, pose no public safety risk. For those behind bars close to death, states have some version of compassionate release, but many of those people simply are unable to file a petition, and others will die while the bureaucracy pushes papers. As a recent Boston Globe editorial headline put it, the graying of the state's prison cries out for a dose of compassion. And, may we add, common decency and common sense. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1903. That was the day that is remembered in Virginia as the wreck of Old 97. Old 97, also known as the Fast Mail, was a Southern Railway freight train. It carried the U.S. mail from Washington, D.C. to Atlanta, Georgia. The train wreck happened on the leg of the trip from Monroe, Virginia to Spencer, North Carolina. The train had come in late to Monroe. It was reported that the railway company ordered the engineer to increase the speed of the train to make up time. the company had to pay a penalty if they delivered the mail late. But when the train neared Danville, Virginia, the tracks curved at the Stillhouse Trestle Bridge. The speed was simply too much. Despite the engineers' efforts to slow the train, it careened off the tracks and plummeted to the rocky ravine 45 feet below. 11 of the 16 people on board the train died, including the conductor, the engineer, and the flagmen and both firemen. The railway company blamed the wreck on the deceased engineer. Newspapers across the country carried photos of the wreck. The disaster became the subject of multiple ballads. One version, by Vernon Dalhart in 1924, is thought to be the first million-selling country record in U.S. history. Johnny Cash recorded another well-known version of the song. In 1993, an alternative country band took the name the Old 97s, hearkening back to the disaster and the songs that inspired.
They gave him his orders at Monroe, Virginia. Said, Steve, you're way behind time. This is not 38, this is old 97. You must put her into Spencer on time.
For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 53 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting highs of only around 68. Sun and clouds mixed with a slight chance of a rain shower or two throughout the day, winds light and variable. And it has been raining fairly steady since about 3:30 this morning local time. And it's currently, sprinkling right now, more than a mist, and maybe a sprinkle. But that looks like that will be continuing at least for another several hours, and then intermixed with some rain showers, and we would like that. Generally clear skies tonight with lows in the low 40s. Winds light and variable, and then a few clouds from time to time near tomorrow with highs near 70 and winds light and variable, and then quite a big dropping of rain expected on Friday, 1/4 of an inch or more. Ragweed pollen is rated high here in our little burg of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 16 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is in the moderate range at level 5. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.13 inches. Visibility is at 6 miles, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world, and that makes up the Weather Underground, because it is the Weather Underground. London is 70 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 80 degrees with a rain shower. Rome is 86 and fair. Kabul is 62 degrees and clear. Kyiv is 70 and fair. Hong Kong is 82 with light rain. Tokyo is 77 degrees and mostly cloudy. Melbourne, Victoria, Australia is 54 and clear. San Francisco, California is 60 degrees and sunny. Chicago, Illinois is 65 degrees and cloudy. And New York, New York is 64 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Associated Press staff brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. The German government today banned a far-right racist group known for its indoctrination of children as police raided dozens of homes of its members and other buildings early in the morning. A statement from the German Interior Ministry said it banned the Artgemeinschaft group, an anti-democratic association with about 150 members, all of its sub-organizations, including the Gefahrstoffen, Gilden, Freudenkreise, and Familienwerk were also banned, the ministry said. We are banning a sectarian, deeply racist and anti-Semitic association, Interior Minister Nancy Faeser said. This is another hard blow against the right-wing extremism and those who continue to spread Nazi ideologies to this day, she said, adding that the organization had attempted to indoctrinate their children and young people with their anti-democratic ideology. Under the cover of a pseudo-religious Germanic belief in gods, the Artgemeinschaft spread its Nazi worldview, the ministry said. In addition to the ideology of racial doctrine, the symbolism, narratives, and activities the group showed further parallels the Nazis' ideology. The group gave its members instructions on how to choose a proper spouse within the Northern and Central European humankind in order to pass on the correct genetic makeup. According to the association's racist ideology, people of other origins were degraded, the ministry said in a statement. In early morning raids across 12 states, police searched 26 apartments of 39 group members, as well as the organization's clubhouses. And last week, as reported here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, the German government banned the neo-Nazi group Hammerskins Germany and raided homes of dozens of its members. The group was an offshoot of an American right-wing extremist group and played a prominent role in the far-right scene across Europe.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Kelvin Chan of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A top European Union official said yesterday, Tuesday, that the social network X, formerly known as Twitter, is the biggest source of fake news and urged owner Elon Musk to comply with the bloc's laws aimed at combating disinformation. I don't think he will. Ahead of upcoming elections, Google, TikTok, Microsoft, and Meta also have more to do to tackle disinformation, much of it coming from Mother Russia, which is using social media to wage a war of ideas against democracy, European Commission Vice President Vera Jourova said. And that's the argument I've been putting to the folks here in our little burg of Rogue River about what's happening to our schools. It is a war of ideas, and it is Russian psyops. Moscow's disinformation operation is a multi-million euro weapon of mass manipulation aimed both at internally at Russians as well as at Europeans and the rest of the world, she said at a press briefing in Brussels. With elections scheduled in Slovakia and Poland in the coming weeks and a bloc-wide vote next year, big online platforms must address the risk of online meddling, she said. The Kremlin and other malicious actors, let's not forget the Chinese, they're in on this too, will try to use the design features of the platforms to manipulate, Jourova said. The European Commission, the EU's executive arm, released a study of 6 online platforms in Poland, Slovakia, and Spain and found that Twitter had the highest prevalence of disinformation and the biggest ratio of disinformation actors. Jourova warned Musk that he is not off the hook just because his company dropped out of the code. The code has been incorporated into a strict new set of mandatory European regulations known as the Digital Services Act, which subjects the biggest online platforms, including X, to the highest levels of scrutiny. Now, there are obligations given by the hard law, so my message for Twitter is you have to comply with the hard law, and we will be watching what you are doing. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.